Hello and welcome to an unexpected podcast. My name is Tim, and with me as always we have Rainier and Matt. And then joining us as seems to be a regular is Evan Iverson. On this week's episode, we're going to be going over a list by Ralph Swanson, and our main topic is going to be the Corsairs of Umbar and going over that army. But I'd like to remind everybody to leave any questions they have for a Q&A that we'll have in the future, as well as to let everyone know that we are available on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts in case you'd prefer to watch us there as well.
Or listen to us there, which is really all you can do.
Well, I like to change things up, make things different.
It would be weird if they watched us for 2 hours. Just
maybe they like that screen. They like the picture. They want to examine everything about it,
It's creepy, but it's good.
Yeah, to each their own, I suppose. So we'll go over the list right now, which is from Ralph. So it's a 600-point Farharad Serpent Horde alliance. And the first warband is Suladan on an armored horse with 5 Harajan warriors with spear and 5 Harajan warriors with bow and spear. It's also got warband 2, which is a Mahud King with war camel, war spear, and shield. And then 5 Mahud Raiders with war camel and war spear. And 10 half trolls. So it's 27 models, 5 might and 5 bows. He said the idea of the list is to create more threats than your opponent can answer, all of which hit hard on their own. You get 2 mounted heroes with access to heroic strike, 5 war camels, and 10 men wide infantry line with terror. Fight 5, 4 attacks to win the fight if they're in the banner range. Strength 5 and D6 with 2 wounds in front. Even though he's low on might, he says, and models almost every combat should be in range of Suladan's banner. And while slightly on the squishy side, he should be able to survive some shooting or bad rounds of combat. So he's from Germany, which is always good to hear that we have people watching from different countries. You look at it on paper, and at 600 points, you're not going to really get many big heroes. So having someone like Suladan and the Mahud King, who can both do a lot of damage, is always great. That 6-inch banner, of course, is, he's definitely going to be sticking together. He'll have, obviously, the Harajan warriors in the back, getting a couple shots if he can. Not too worried about it, though, because he'll have defense 6 in front with the 2 wounds. Then he'll put the half trolls in front there. And then he'll have the Mahud Raiders go kind of out wide and attack what they need to or get to objectives that he needs to. 27 models, it's a little light, but not that bad. But again, his army is pretty durable with the half trolls in front having 2 wounds at defense 6 and fight 5. With the terror as well in the front rank, it'll be really interesting at this many points value, unless the person has bodyguard or maybe they have a shaman or something like that. But it'll be really tough to actually beat through this army unless they have either a bigger hero to take down the half trolls or they have a lot of numbers. But even then, you still have to charge. So I don't know. And on paper, it seems pretty good. But what do you guys think about it?
I think it's amazing, to be honest. I'm a huge fan of half trolls. I know I took 4 to Farharad Serpent Alliance 800-point army to Nashville once, and I thought 4 was enough. But I've heard a lot of guys in my group and in other groups spamming them like 10, and it's a pain in the neck because right off the bat you think, okay, you've got 2 major threats: Suladan, the King. King can do most of the damage. Suladan has that banner and leader points. You want to focus on him. And then you think, oh, shoot, there's also 5 Mahud Raiders who can kill me in the movement phase and really do damage with the heroic combats with Suladan and the King. And then on top of that, you think, geez, I've got 10 half trolls, which are basically captain, fight 5, strength 5 profiles, 2 attacks, 2 wounds. So I think it's really strong, and 27 models at 600 points actually isn't that bad when you compare how many half trolls you have in the list, because those suckers take a lot to take down, You got to think of your basic heroes of men like Eomer, Theoden, Durnhelm, all of them, like they're gonna have to strike just to win a fight against them. So yeah, I really like it. Of course, the squishy spots will be the warriors, but I think it's a great list.
Yeah. So, and I think, well, I'm on the same page. I really like this list, and the Harad warriors, I guess, stand behind the half trolls, so at least they have half troll cover. You have Suladan to march if you need to get in range of shooting. I guess there's going to be vulnerability to the heavy shooting armies like the Rangers, but frankly, what else are you going to? Yeah, I'm not sure how to solve that problem at 600 points, and I'm not sure that is a solvable problem at 600 points. And I assume you're going to have all of your mounted stuff, the King, Suladan, and the 5 Raiders, unless they're going off on some kind of dispersed task, are going to be behind the battle line and wait until somebody tries to envelop one flank and then go crashing into the attempted envelopment, which I think is the right role for the camels, because they get to counterpunch and they get to get the most of their impact hits. If one tweak you could make, and I don't know if I would necessarily make this, would be you could change one half troll into another Mahood Raider with Camel and War Spear, and then take the 5 points left over from that conversion to give 5 of your Mahood Raiders blowpipes, just to give you a little more standoff power. Because I think probably 9 half trolls will accomplish just about anything that 10 half trolls will. And that would give you a little more shooting power, but I don't think you necessarily have to make it. That would leave you with a file of, basically a Haradrim warrior with nothing to do but run around on the flank, which is probably okay. Or maybe he's your objective grabber. He's the guy that just kind of like hides in the woods with his bow and plinks out of it while standing on an objective. And that would give you 5 poison blowpipes, which probably, because of the camels, are going to be able to, depending on where you deploy them, they may be able to shoot over the heads of or between this line. Something else you could think about here is, instead of having your foot battle line, shoulder to shoulder in the front rank, leave just slightly less than a cavalry rank between them, so that they get charged. They're going to have several guys hitting each half troll, and maybe overlap, and then your Mahood Raiders just kind of go running into the gaps, get their impact hits, and then soak people off. That might be a good, if you needed to cover more with this battle line, that would be kind of a good way to kind of get the most of your counter charge with the Raiders. But that's just a thought. Other than that, I think it's a great list.
A question: How many? Oh, so you go for it, Evan. Sorry.
Oh, it's just like there's not much I can really add to this whole thing, because this list seems to be pretty solid, and the person building it clearly knew what they were doing when they built it. And obviously the list does have weaknesses. Something like Corsairs or Rangers of Ithilien, or a Harad army with the Betrayer or something like that, will shoot it off the planet. But that's something you've got to be prepared for. Another thing, a couple of things I found with half trolls is, if your opponent did in fact decide to take one of those fight 6 3 attack heroes, and they don't even have to be the big ones, they can be like Boromir of Gondor or something like that. If they really want to commit them in, they can kill 2, maybe even 3 half trolls in a turn. So that's just something you have to be wary of, because that's a lot of points that can go down the drain very quickly. So you can't always rely on your half trolls to just truck through absolutely everything. Other than that, I think half trolls are they're an interesting concept, especially because of the auto pass courage within 6 of the Mahood King. And they definitely can do a lot of damage, and terror is super useful. So I'd be interested to see if he were to take this to a tournament or something like that, how it goes.
See, I think I would do two things. So first off, I kind of go exactly with what Matt was saying. If you put blowpipes on your raiders, it gives them kind of like a dual action. They can attack and they can shoot. I find when I play Mahood, I prefer them to have blowpipes because as is, you're waiting for the opportune time to charge your opponent because the fight 3 on the Mahood, they're probably not going to survive the counter charge. So you have to make it perfect. So what I would do is I'd actually take the shield off the Mahood King and I'd use those 5 points to give the Raiders blowpipes. Then I would drop 1 half troll and convert him into 3 Haradrim warriors. That gives you 29 models, a little more breathing room when it comes to like objective game. Because we all, I think, are in agreement. This is like a meat stick list, really good, like in combat. Battle line's going to be like unbreakable almost. But just maybe a couple more models for objectives to spread your force further. So that's what I would do. I mean, we all agree it's really good. Like I said, is maybe take the shield off the Mahood King. A lot of people like him having that extra defense, but I'm like, if he's going and he's going to kill stuff and die eventually, put it on the Raider and then take a troll out to get a couple more dudes. And I think what none of us mentioned about like how good this list is too is I forgot that Soladan is a hero of legend too. So even if your Mahood King dies, Soladan's gonna pass the first courage test automatically once your force is broken. And just I love all the cover you're giving for your half trolls. This is very, very good list. Like if anyone's watching this, take this list to 600-point tournament.
So, is there any kind of when you look at the army? I know we've talked about we can make this change or that change. Is there anything that you would kind of worry about when playing the army, kind of a thing? Like maybe a little bit of advice for him when playing the army that he should be aware of or keep an eye out for.
I think Evan said it perfectly. Shooting.
Mm-hmm.
When he talked, shooting's a big problem. Especially a horde army shooting. Evan alluded to Athelian Rangers. Like you can't hit the whole Athelian Ranger army. They can spread out and hit you in different objects. Corsairs too, I'd watch out for. That would be my big thing.
Assault on Helm's Deep might be very painful. I'm not sure if you're able to fit 2 ballistas into the list at this point's value, but I think you are. And those ballistas are going to be instant killing your half trolls and your raiders, and that's going to be very threatening. And also they have a bunch of strength 4 crossbows, which will just mince all of your warriors and all of your defense 6 and defense 4 guys. And I think that was a good point, Rainier, with the shield, because generally I'm very wary of dropping my heroes from defense 6 to defense 5. Because those heroes I found generally like to get murdered by Legolas. But because Suladan is already defense 5 and Legolas is definitely going to be shooting at Suladan, then it's less of a problem. So
I'm not sure Legolas is going to be shooting at Suladan. I suspect the first thing that's going to happen is the Mahood King's war camel is going to die. But that's
well, it depends how many shots Legolas gets, because if you're playing something like Reconnoiter, if you shoot Legolas, like if you get 6 to 7 shots maybe with Legolas, you can just shoot out Suladan and he's already killed more than his points value. Yeah. So that's just something to be wary of.
I think one thing, because we're talking about what to be wary of, but one thing to counter it, because I know like you've made a really good list, so I'd assume that you're decent at the game. Is for people watching is I would throw my half trolls in the front of the line, like not just like one line, like double up on the half trolls, send them like heavy in front, because you can lose 1 or 2 half trolls, even 3, and once you hit combat, that's fine. They'll do their shenanigans. But if you lose 5, 6, 7, 8 Haradrim warriors, then that's when you're going to see a problem. So protect those warriors as much as possible, even if it means losing a few half trolls. And the beauty of the half trolls too is you take a wound out on them and it's like, okay, it's got 1 wound left, but its stats are still stacked. so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I'd be wary of that.
So-
like give them cover fire. They're your meat shields.
Would you use the Mahud Raiders almost as like a stop the opponent from getting around to your spearmen kind of a thing? Like, would you use them as like a side thing to like say, well, you're not going to get to my back rank in a sense?
Yeah, I play them at side, but this list is less. It looks like a shield wall,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not really defensive army. It's more of a like move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have them on the flanks, kind of like what you would do, but less so protect, more so attack the opponent's flanks.
Well, unless you're going in against shooting, in which case,
Oh yeah, you keep them back.
wall of half trolls followed by wall of Haradrim raiders followed by everything on a camel or a horse. So
Mhm.
there's at least 2 in the ways before you get to anything that's on a camel or a horse.
Yeah, and even with the camels, you don't have to send them with the heroic marches in a way. You could throw them because of their speed behind houses, woodland, rocks, stuff like that. Throw them around to get cover. It'll freak out the opponent too because they just look terrifying, and 1 or 2 of them on a good move phase can totally screw over like a low defense army. And that's the thing about the armies where like, oh, be aware of Corsairs, be aware of Athelian. Like once you hit them, like boom, 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 like they're gonna like mow them down like really well. So your opponent will know that too. So I'd play them like you have 5, 1 or 2 you could play around on like the far flanks to kind of freak your opponent out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they are also they're much more effective when they're counterpunching, much more so than regular cavalry because of that strength 4 impact hit, so that they can, not just go in and hit. I mean, particularly against, if you're playing something that has a low defense, like a 4 defense or lower, that's where you let him kind of wrap around your half trolls and try and surround them, and then they come and sweep in, and they can, if you get enough of them kind of counterpunching at one time, you can kind of just basically sweep that envelopment off the table. And then, your half trolls, instead of having to fight, like 2 guys with spears, end up having to fight like, 1 guy or 1 guy and perhaps a spear behind, and then they kill it and you kind of move on to the next thing.
Yeah, you'll usually, once you hit the battle lines, it'll start like this, and then you'll see it piercing through, and then the opponent's army will kind of spread like the Red Sea in the Bible, because you're just going to punch a hole in the army.
Yep.
And then like that's where we're all like alluding to, the flanks is where like the main part of the strategy is going to come. And we didn't even talk about the heroes. Like I think the hero play is really important, and they can offer, once you get them into combat, they offer the Mahud Raiders a lot of like shield and protection.
But Suladon in this list is it's the ultimate addition with that
Oh my
banner.
God, your battle line at 5 is getting 4 rolls to win the fight. That is just crazy.
And not only that, but you're also giving your cavalry, the extra 3rd dice on the charge as well. So with that war spear, they're going to get. It's just, Suladon really is a great model. Any last thoughts?
No, I think we've covered it.
Yeah, I
All right.
mean, other than just like make sure to be using your camels correctly. If they get pinned down, make sure you've got at least 1 guy free to start that whole chain reaction by slamming through 1 guy, killing them, freeing up your other guy to move, and then slamming some more guys, and then just trying to punch right through them and get as many charge bonuses as possible.
Yeah, and to visualize what Evan's saying is like, don't bring your camels like a beautiful battle line charging, like 1 in the front, 1 like 5 inches back. So if he gets charged, the one in the back, when it's your turn, can charge, kill the guy that's charged the original one. Then that guy charges again, and it's just like a sweet little like patty cake game. You're like bam, 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 bam. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let us know, Ralph, if you end up using this in a game or a tournament. We mentioned possibly getting rid of a half troll for blow pipes and an extra Mahud, or like Rainier said, maybe you drop the shield and add some more warriors. But let us know how you do. There's not a whole lot to talk. It's a very good list, Ralph. But yeah, let us know how you do with it. We're gonna move on to the main topic for today. which is the Corsairs. So I think the first thing we should go over is the army bonus review. So do you guys think this is worth keeping on this army? Or is it just yes?
So the army special bonus is backstabbers. The only way you could do it is, I think the only historical allies are Mordor and Harad. Serpent Horde, I think. Is Mordor a historical alliance with them?
Let me look.
know if it is.
Isn't actually.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
So
It is not.
Just the Serpent Horde. So yeah, it's very, very good. The Backstabber special rule, because you have basically a Fight 4 model that's 7 points. Of course, this is without him being kitted. That has Backstabber, which is just insane.
Why don't you talk through?
We got some lagging going on. So the Backstabber rule is if you trap your opponent, you get 1+ to wound with whichever model has Backstabber. So this is an army-wide special rule. It only applies to Corsair models. So we'll go over Black Numenoreans and Marshals and stuff like that in this list. It does not apply to them. It just applies to basically the pirate-looking dudes. So whenever they're in combat and you trap your opponent, you get +1 to wound. That is Backstabbers, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll move on, I believe, unless there's any. I don't think there's anything else. We'll move on to the first profile, which is kind of the leader of the army.
I mean, one more thing. Sorry, one more thing on backstabbers is it's not necessarily required, I'd say, but you need to really think about if you want to drop it. So I'm talking like you're taking an army with a bunch of Reavers in it, and you're like, I really need the Shadow Lord to be able to protect my Reavers, or something along those lines, because it's not army bonus that you want to drop lightly, because it can be very strong.
Okay. So we'll move on to the first profile, which is Dalamir, Fleetmaster of Umbar. So Rainier, if you want to go over that one.
All right, so Dalamir, Fleetmaster of Umbar, is a hero of legend. He's basically a named hero with a Hasharan profile. Fight 5, he hits his throwing weapons on 3, strength 4, defense 4, 3 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4. So that whole like assassin kind of profile, troop killer, but also like has the ability to go toe to toe with a couple heroes. His heroic actions are heroic strike and heroic defense. Strike, of course, is important because he can go up against big heroes. Defense is really important because he's a hero of legend, so many times you'll take him as your leader.
Also,
and his
defense 4.
Defense 4, yeah. Defense 4 is very lacking, so an Urkai warrior can wound him on a 4, basically. He has 2 might, 2 will, 3 fate, and 2 wounds. So one big kicker right there is I love to take him as my general because 3 fate, 3 fate, heroic defense, and then he also has stock unseen, so he has an elven cloak. Basically, you can only hit him with shooting weapons if he's within 6 inches, if he's protruded by any terrain. So yeah, special rules are Bane of Kings, so he rerolls any to wound rolls in the combat phase. Like this is specific to the combat phase. I know when I first played him, it was confused because his throwing weapons, it's just the combat phase. So he has Bane of Kings, stock unseen, and Preternatural. Lord have mercy, guys. Preternatural.
Let me bring it back because I always get confused. Now with Bane of Kings, is it you must reroll or you can reroll?
Must.
Yeah, so if you're not trying to kill something, just keep that in mind that if you fail the wound, you have to try to reroll to wound again.
Yeah, exactly. So he's kills stuff pretty well. So his agility special rule, which I cannot pronounce because I'm from the south.
Preternatural. Very good.
Wow. Oh my
You got
goodness.
there in the
guys.
end.
Wow, there we go. So that is an amazing rule. Basically, he cannot be trapped whilst on foot. So you can knock him over with a cav model, which he does not like, and kill him pretty easily. But if he's trapped, surrounded by goblins, heroes, anything, like you put him up against a wall, he cannot be trapped, which is amazing. His war gear is a sword, throwing daggers, and smoke bombs. Throwing daggers are really good because he hits on 3s, and smoke bombs as well. Smoke bombs is a really cool special rule, actually. Is hits on 3 to throwing weapon if your opponent does not expand a fate point. They are, what is the rule? Immobilized. And it's
channeled
as if
version of transfix.
Channeled version of transfix. So it's really good. I don't use
By
it
the
that
way,
often.
it's to cancel it, you spend a point of will, not a point of fate.
Oh, spin of will. Thank you. So yeah, I find that I don't use it that often against heroes because many times people have will and they'll use it against them, unless you drain it with the Knight of Umbar, which we'll talk about. But yeah, it's pretty good. The only downside is if you roll a natural 1, you lose it for the whole game in the throwing, in the to hit. So yeah, he's really good. I love him. I think when I bring a Corsair list, he's like where I start right off the bat because he gives you a great troop killer model, a great leader, and a great model that basically has the ability to spam this army, which you'll want to do. And he's hard to kill or wound, which is amazing. What do you guys think?
So yeah, I mean everything. Go ahead.
In case you thought trolls were actually useful, now you can just throw a smoke bomb at them and they can't resist it at all. So you charge in and you kill them. In case you needed another way to kill a poor helpless monster without any heroic stats.
Yeah, Eagle too.
Yeah, I mean obviously there are a couple of glaring weaknesses to Dalamir's profile. Obviously with the 2 might instead of 3. Not being able to take him out and stuff like that. But even then, there's so much that Dalamir does for the army that you can sort of move past those weaknesses. I'm fairly sure he is the second cheapest hero of legend in the game behind Sharky, which nobody uses. So for all intents and purposes, he is the cheapest hero of legend in the game. So
Sharky is a hero of legend? Wow.
I'm fairly sure.
The legend of Sharky.
The legend of Sharky.
Yep,
Sharky, the legend continues.
I think technically a Witch King without stats is cheaper, but I don't know what you're doing if you're taking a Witch King without stats.
You're having a fun time.
Yeah, that is what you're doing. Though I don't think it's very fun to not play the Crown of Morgul.
I just like the thrill of knowing that I have no might, 0 fate, and if anybody does even 1 wound, I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty sure Dalamir is an auto take with this list. He's the first figure that you buy, and because he packs an awful lot into a 90-point package there, and the smoke bombs are a lot of fun. I think Evan's right. Their main use is against monsters that have no will, because typically you don't see Dalamir in a list with a caster, although you could do it. And he's kind of a neat guy to ally into a list with an effective ring wraith as opposed to the Knight of Umbar that we'll get to in a minute. But just because, once the ring wraith or whatever kind of does something to drain off the will. So say the ring wraith transfixes a hero and he spends his his will to avoid that, and then in the shoot phase Dalamir just throws a smoke bomb at him, and then he's channel transfixed, and a lot of people will kind of forget about that, and especially against there are a few 1 will heroes running around out there, and it's really bad news for them. But because, and also because he's on foot and can just hide behind this mass of Corsairs, of which he can bring 18 with them, he just hides back in the mob, waits for his opportunity to run through a little gap, and goes up and assassinates somebody.
Yeah, I think like him on foot can actually be a bonus because of exactly what Matt said. Like little tiny gap, boom, there's Dalmir and he's there to play. And I think we talk a lot about his smoke bombs, their potential against monsters. I think his throwing daggers though are a really good take, especially for when you have the initiative and you have a little gap. So he's not going to get charged if they get the move off. But if you get the move off, you can throw him between the gaps, throw into say a mega hero, potentially kill the mega hero's horse. Then they fall down and he can like slaughter him or do different shenanigans. So yeah, him being on foot is also like a good take. Plus opponents don't see him as a threat. They're like, oh, there's your defense four leader. Like I'm going to try to get to him. And when they do get to them, it's like, shoot, he's fight 5. He has strike and defense, 3 attacks. He rerolls wounds. What are you going to do? So we talk a lot in this show about models with multiple roles. And I just think him as a model, what is he, 90 points? Like, I think 90, right? Like that's insane for all the roles that he does, not just himself in the battle, but also for your army as a whole, having a hero of legend, a really good leader. Like it's just a really good model in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the great thing is he has strike and defense. So, I mean, the benefit of being able to go, well, I need to win this fight or I need to stay alive. I mean, obviously he only has the 2 might compared to, I think he had 3 in the old edition, if I'm correct.
I don't think he did.
No, he didn't?
No.
Okay, maybe that's just me being. I mean, yeah, he definitely is that model that you kind of go, you got to be careful of those smoke bombs because even though you can expend a point of will, it's still annoying to have to, deal with any kind of transfix whatsoever. So like if you needed that will to pass a courage test or something, and you have to use it it's annoying. I like him. Any other thoughts? Nope.
Just take him.
Yeah, just take him.
Just take him.
We'll move into a model which in the old edition was probably the most used evil model in the entire game, I would think. But now I don't think it's used almost at all. The Knight of Umbar. So Evan, if you want to go over him.
Yeah, so the Knight of Umbar, he's got the classic Ring Wraith profile. So obviously move 6, fight 5, shoot value 4 up, but that doesn't matter. Strength 4, defense 8, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6. And then the very unfortunate 2 might, 12 will, 2 fate, which is a little on the lower side for Ring Wraith stats. He's got the armor of the Sunderland and a sword. And the armor of the Sunderland means that he only loses a point of will for having been in a fight if he loses a fight during the fight phase. So the Will of Evil special rule only applies if he loses the fight. So basically what they want from you is they want you to have him fighting. Other than this, Harbinger, Terror, Will of Evil, all the normal stuff. And another special rule being combat mimicry. So at the start of any fight phase, before heroic actions are declared, he can spend a will to activate it. He can use the fight, strength, and or attack values of his opponent instead of his own. And he can mix and match. So he can only take the fight. He can take the fight and the strength or anything like that. And his magical powers, he's got Drain Courage on a 3-up, Transfix on a 4-up, Compel on a 5-up, Instill Fear on a 5-up, Sap Will on a 5-up, and Black Dart on a 6-up. So his spells are absolute garbage.
They suck.
Everything a Ring Wraith casts, he casts on a 1 higher casting value. So it is so much harder for you to cast anything. That 1 dice Drain Courage you wanted to throw off very reliably, well, you're failing 33% of the time. Casting Transfix only 50% of the time, and once you get to Compel and Black Dart, which you cast on a 5-up and a 6-up, you're almost never casting them. So they clearly very much do not want you casting that many spells with this guy. But then the problem arises is that he's got this combat profile and all these combat special rules, and he doesn't have heroic strike. So let's say, for example, you charge into a troll and you're like, okay, this is great. I'm going to copy your fight 7. I'm going to copy your 3 attacks. And then you both roll 6s and you lose the roll off. And there's nothing you can do about that. Because unless you channel Transfix, which as we talked about earlier is incredibly hard to do because he casts it on a higher value and he needs to spend might and all that stuff.
Even for heroic strike
incredibly-
against like you match an Aragorn and then he heroic strikes and you're like, I can't even heroic strike. Like,
yeah, it's very, very unreliable. And
Everything you can do, I can do worse.
yeah, I mean, there is no justification for taking this guy over Kamul because Kamul basically does everything this guy does and more.
I think you could probably end the sentence after there's no justification for taking this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a classic case of like he was too powerful in the old edition. Let's make him irrelevant in the new edition.
You've had your day in the sun. Now go sit at the back of the class.
Yeah.
Let your 8 brothers play. Like you've had your chance.
It's time
You
for
got
you to
8
retire.
brothers. It's their turn.
You're benched.
Yeah, he is the new tainted of the old edition. Where
Yeah.
why would you ever take this guy?
Mhm.
Because there are ring rates that are better than him.
I mean, I know we don't like to do this very often, but in your opinion, in a Corsair list specifically, because we're talking about them, if they fixed him where he had heroic strike and he went up to let's say they kept him at 12-0, if they gave him heroic strike, would you take him in this list?
Possibly. I don't think he would be an auto include, but I think he would be a model that people would actually consider taking.
Yeah, he would be useful. I mean, he kind of essentially, if they gave him heroic strike, he kind of becomes Kamul because he's the same type of guy. I mean, since we're off in the realm of fantasy land, in the land of how would I fix this guy that's clearly broken? I mean, my thought was since he's got this armor of the Sundered Land that allows him to do things that have nothing to do with armor, right? You know, he only loses a point of will for, I mean, I don't know what armor has to do with that. I mean, apparently it's just like a magical suit that allows him to not lose will. It would be actually, I think, be fun to turn that into something that actually reflects armor. So like he had, say, the ability to like shrug off a hit on a 4+.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of the striking wraith, he becomes the tank wraith.
The Goblin King Wraith.
Between that,
Exactly.
between that and the combat mimicry, you just put him into somebody and say, I am going to sit here and be just as good as you for the entire game till one of us goes down. And because I can shrug off half the hits I take, that could be a long time.
If you want to be even more flavorful, you could give him something like heroic defense, which I don't think any other wraith has, and it would definitely.
That'd be
add-
interesting. Yeah, that'd be.
And I think
interesting
it's
stuff,
doable too because he only has a 12 will, so it's like you can't really cast, and even throwing him into combat is in a way gonna be beneficial to your opponent because he's losing the will. So something like that to make him relevant a little bit, it's not gonna make him overpowered anyway.
He's one of those because he's got 12 will, which I don't think. I mean, they've established that they want Kamul at 12 will because he fights. They want Knight of Umbar at 12 will because he fights. That's fine. That's been established. I don't have an issue with that. They give him the ability to not lose will as long as he's not losing the fight. Fair, you know, it makes him so that he has his will for boosting up his ability to go to whatever attacks and fight value he wants to go to, and so I definitely think adding. But let me ask you this. Would you make it unique in the fact that when you call a heroic defense, does heroic defense only affect the model or does it affect the mount as well?
It only affects the model.
Okay, so I'm assuming we wouldn't want to do something where it affects the mount as well.
You could even do it where he can only heroic defense when
Make
he's
the only model in the game
off
who
the
can heroic
mount.
defense into their model as well.
Well, no, I mean you could So I guess one issue with this is interesting. So one issue with heroic defense on a ring wraith is most of the time he's only going to be wounded on 6s anyway.
Mhm.
So what you're really doing is preventing the ability of somebody else to spend or 6/4s,
Mhm.
preventing the ability of somebody to like spend might to influence that.
Mhm.
But yeah, what you could do is say basically, hey, he could call a heroic defense by spending a point of will.
That'd be
That would be a
interesting.
way to do it.
That'd be interesting.
Wait,
And that's
actually, what if we sort of lean into that idea of him being a monster killer and give him armor that's basically the same as the armor of Gondolin, so it means he can't have brutal power attacks against him, so he can just walk right into a monster and say, hey, you can't hurl me, you can't rend me, you can't barge me, you can't do any of that stuff, and I'm just going to sit here and be annoying. That would be interesting.
you could, but
right after what's his face Dalmir like channel transfixes the monster.
I mean, I'm not sure I would take him just as a monster killer.
I think the point
'Cause, I
though
mean,
that
you get pretty much the same. Well, I suppose no, I was thinking you get the same benefit from a ring wraith, but not really, because you could still be hurled by a stronger monster, and most of them are stronger. But
I think the problem is with him is mounted on a fell beast. He's more expensive than Dalmir and Dalgamar combined,
Mhm.
which is just troublesome.
But here's
there.
the point. I think the point we're trying to make though is like, even though you may prefer to do the other route where you go Dalgamar and Dalamir, just having the ability to go, well, if I want to go with him, I can still use him in a capable way. I think that's all we're not asking for him to be what he was in the old edition, where you use him and you go, okay, well, he's like an auto include. We're just saying we want him to be usable to a point where you go, if I decide to take you instead of this, and this, I'm still going to have relevancy towards him, and he's going to be able to do something. So, we'll see. Hopefully, if there's future editions, maybe that'll get changed. But for now, it is what it is. So there's really no point to using him at the moment. Move into this model might be one of my favorite models in the entire game. This is a Hosharan, and it's very, very similar to what Dalamir is in a sense. But I'm interested to hear about the Hosharan. So Matt, if you want to go over that real quick.
all right, he says, turning to the correct page. So Hasharin, 80 points. He is fight 5, strength 4, defense 4, 3 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4, 1 might, 1 wound, 3 fate, daggers, throwing daggers, and
one
a blowpipe.
will, not 1 wound.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1 will. 1 might, 1 will, 3 fate, daggers, throwing daggers, and a blowpipe. He has heroic strike, and he has heroic defense. So he is kind of like a mini Dalamir. Again, Bane of Kings, so poison, and stalk unseen. And he also has the preternatural agility thing, or special rules. So he can never be trapped while still standing. He's a hero of fortitude, so he can lead 12 guys. I have to say, I have never used a Hasharan. I think this is one of the few figures that we don't own. I've always kind of been deterred by the 80 points for hero of fortitude with 1 might and defense 4. I mean, Dalamir is only 10 points more, and he comes with a lot more bells and whistles.
Now, remember, they are a hero of valor in the Corsairs.
Oh, are they hero of valor in the Corsair list? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Did not know that. All right, so that's a little better. You can lead 15 Corsairs with one of these guys. But anyway, I mean, his stats indicate he's somebody that you should think about, but he's never anybody I've actually kind of thought about. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has used him here.
Yes.
I played him. Oh, how'd you do with them, Tim? Because I played them with them too.
I mean, I've used them in a Herod list. I don't play Corsairs, so I can't say I've used them in a Corsair list, but I think I ran one time, I think I ran triple Hasharan with, I think it was, in the old edition, it was Golden King, but in this edition, I'd used Suladan, of course. The problem, so if anybody remembers in the old edition, Aristor was 1 might as well. And he's basically the good version of a Hasharan / Dalamir, where he rerolls to wound. He only had 2 attacks, but obviously he had the fight 6, so he was, and people would kind of. It's not that you wouldn't use Aristor, but you were just like, God, I just wish he was that little bit better. So what did they do in this edition? They gave him 1 extra might, and it makes such a difference for him having 2 might. And I just wish that they would give the Hasharans 2 might. If they gave them 2 might, I think they'd be seen a lot more, because not only do you have the option to heroic defense, you have the option to heroic strike. It gives them a little bit more ability to be used, because at one might point, I mean, like I said, I took 3 of them. That's only 3 might. That's 1 named hero, basically. But if you have 2 might and you go up to 6, well, it starts to make a difference. I think if you give, because the thing is, you don't want them fighting heroes, of course, unless you're able to trap them. Because what ends up happening is that with that 1 might, you can only get in a fight 1 time with a hero, and you save it for that specific moment where if you get screwed by a hero coming into you or heroic combating, then you either call heroic defense or heroic strike, your choice. If they gave them 2 might, it just makes such a difference. So I don't think they're usable until they get 2 might, in my opinion. But they are very good models, and they destroy troops just like Dalamir would. And the other thing, they have blowpipes and
Throwing weapons
weapons as well. So having that blowpipe, well, it's not that big of a deal. Well, if they're coming at you, especially in a Corsair list, you get that extra little range for a blowpipe or 2, and then they come into the throwing knives as well. So I don't know. I really like Hasharans. I just think they need that extra point of might.
Yeah, I agree with you, because when I first started playing Corsairs, I was like, let me give these guys a try. And I tried them on my list, but that 1 might, like, to put it in perspective, it's you come up against an Aragorn and you're like, I'm gonna heroic strike or defense. Which one should I do? If you decide to heroic strike, cool. If you win, you maybe wound him once and then he kills you the next round.
Exactly.
If you heroic defense, you survive this round and then he kills you the next round.
Exactly.
So it's puts their role into basically only a troop killer role, in my opinion.
Yes.
You could use them to kill like mid-tier heroes or something, but for that many points, it's just not. And even as a troop killer, you can't even really heroic combat with them, because if you heroic combat with them once, then boom, there goes my might. Now I can't strike or defense with them, so there goes those tools. So yeah, it is basically just a troop killer. They kind of fixed the model in a way with Gondor at War when they added what is that new Haradrim?
Raza.
Raza is kind of, in a way, even though Raza has some like things he doesn't have, what a Sharn should have been, in my opinion. But
I'll be honest,
yeah.
When I saw Raza come out on paper, I was so excited, because I'm like, finally, there's another 3 might hero. He has the ability to go to fight 6 to fight off heroes. That one hero you don't want to fight against, maybe you pick him, and then you just kind of use him and you go, oh, the fight 4 kills him. So you know what I mean? Like if but obviously you can't have everything that you want for as cheap as Raza is, kind of a thing. But
yeah, but Evan alluded to like him leading 15 or he said him leading 15 people. Like that's the one reason you would take him, in my opinion. If you want to just take a horde of Corsairs, don't put too much war gear on your Corsairs. Just take a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, but but there's other ways to do that.
And I think
that's a thing. Like it's like there's better ways.
Well, why take 2 of them when you can take 3 captains and have more warband slots?
Exactly.
But I think the real problem with the Hashari are that they aren't the sum of their parts, because usually when you look at a model, you can sort of see how all of their different abilities and stats sort of are cohesive, and they work together to make a model that has a very specific role. And it feels like the Hasharan is trying to do a whole lot of things, and they just don't do any of them well enough because of their 1 might, because of the fact that despite their ability to reroll to wound rolls, they're not mounted, so they need to get traps in order to really get the most out of it. And they're meant to be defensive with their 2 wounds and 3 fate, but they're defense 4, and they can only call 1 heroic defense. And it's crazy to see how 10 points and one might, one will, the ability to throw smoke bombs, backstabbers, and extra warband size make Dalamir so much more useful than these guys, and basically removes them from the map almost.
Yeah, so these guys don't get backstabbers.
They do not, because they're Haradrim.
They're Haradrim. Yeah. And well, I mean, plus you also have, I mean, we haven't talked about Delgamar yet, but I mean, you all, Delgamar is also somebody that I think you definitely take before you take the Hasharan. So he kind of becomes your third guy, and at that point, you're really into the realm of captains and bosuns, I think, with this list most of the time.
Yeah. So we all agree, cool model, interesting profile, but
Yeah. I mean,
I just hope he gets a point of might.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's got a place in like 1,000-point list or an 800-point list or something like that.
It's really, really fun to play them, I'll say. And I don't think, obviously, we mostly talk about being competitive, but if you want to have fun, they are a very, very fun model to take, and they look so cool as well. I think they're a very cool model. We'll move on to the Corsair Captain. So, Rainier, if you want to go over that.
All right. So if you guys have listened to me in previous podcasts, I'm a huge fan of Fight 5 captains, no-name captains for their cheap points. This is probably one of my favorite. So Corsair Captain is a hero of fortitude. He is a Corsair, so he gets a backstabber. He's Fight 5, hits things on 4s, Strength 4, D4, so basic, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, Courage 4, all basic. He has Heroic March like any other captain does. He's automatically equipped with a sword and throwing daggers. So for 50 points, not bad. His war gear options are a bow, a crossbow, a shield, or a 2-handed weapon. I find people usually use 2 of those options, either a shield to make them survive a little longer or a crossbow. I always put a crossbow on my captains just because the 2 might with a crossbow is a beautiful horse killer for heroes. Yeah, I like them a lot. We're going to go over the bosun, but I like him better than the bosun, to be honest. I think his 2 might, as low as that sounds, is actually pretty high for a Corsair list. So you'll usually see people taking him over a bosun or even a Hasharan, even the Knight of Umbar for such cheap points, because this is where you're going to get the basic might of your list, where you can call heroic marches, heroic moves, and things like that. I think the big kicker for me is his double threat, the first being in the shooting phase with a crossbow. You can might up your crossbow to wound a hero, kill a hero, and his throwing weapons as well. His Backstabber Rule is amazing when you consider that he is Fight 5. So if you couple him with Corsair Warriors or any other models and heroic combat, he can actually munch through things pretty quickly for a basic captain. So yeah, I really like this model a lot. I usually bring at least 1 into my lists, usually 2. I've even toyed around with a spam Corsair list, just pure captains leading warbands of 12, and they each have a crossbow. But yeah, I don't know if there's much to say more about them. You guys might have more to say, but I just think the big highlight is their Fight 5 is really good at killing elite armies that are Fight 4. So that's going to make your heroic combats a lot better. The crossbow, again, is good. The throwing weapons are good. And the backstabber is really good as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much to say about these guys. They're pretty solid. I'm still trying to figure out why a bow and a crossbow are pointed the same, seeing as one of them is strength 4. But
well, you can't move when you shoot it, I guess.
Yeah, but with warriors, crossbows are 2 points and bows are 1 point.
A 5-point crossbow for a hero is a pretty good expenditure of 5 points.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, the only thing else I have to say about them is don't be silly with them. Don't have them sitting out in your front lines when your opponent has a Fight 6 hero lying around, especially if that hero is on horse, because the hero is going to charge in, call a heroic combat, murder your captain, and run off and do something else. So always, always, always be very careful with your heroes that can't heroic strike, because too many times have I been using a random fight 6 hero and just seen the opportunity to go in, charge, kill a fight 5 hero with no heroic strike and just run away, and then I'm 55 points up. So be careful with them. Don't always stick them in front of your lines.
Shooting too, I think, like if you have them in your front line, they die really fast. Especially if you have like a crossbow on them. Yeah, they die really fast. I think they're amazing at the late game. When your opponent's all out of might, let's say on a fight 5 hero, you have then you can throw them in there and be like, hey, like we tie, like, and I'm surrounding you, like 50-50. If you lose it, you're dead. So like I find him really good late game for that. The fight 5, the 2 attacks, and it's just he blends in with the other troops. I love it so much. It's you see like this horde of Corsairs, and it's like, oh yeah, this one has 2 might.
Like, yeah. So this is probably a good time to discuss tactics for heroes on foot, which this army exclusively has. And I mean, this goes to what Evan was saying and Rainier was saying about not putting them in the front line. I think we can expand on that and say never, ever in the approach march phase of a game do you put a hero on foot in the front line. They need to have access to the front line. They need to have a 1-inch hole in the line somewhere near them so that they can, they're not going to get walled off if somebody charges you before you charge them. But they do not want to be in the front line. First of all, so that they don't get shot, which is fairly obvious. And second of all, so that they don't get charged by a mounted hero that is probably going to be better than them. And what you want is particularly in this army that has tons and tons of throwing weapons and is evil, so can shoot into combat. What you want is a front line that's entirely Corsairs of some flavor, and then let the other guys' heroes charge them. Then you take your Corsair heroes and you charge into those 1-inch gaps that you left, which are too small for the enemy mounted heroes to come through, but just fine for your guys to countercharge through. You'll end up charging in, and your guys will munch a warrior or 2 a turn. And then for that big mounted hero that charged your regular Corsair, everybody else backs away from that guy and proceeds to create a nice ring of guys with throwing weapons around him and shoots into combat. And you'll kill your Corsair, and you'll probably kill the other guy's horse. And you may inflict a wound or 2. And the more times you can kind of execute that tactic with Corsairs, the better. And you basically go through and kind of neuter your opponent's heroes. Wait till they're on foot and maybe lost a fate or 2, and maybe having spent some might or something like that. And that's when you want to send your heroes in to deal with them.
Yeah. The basic of the army is you just cripple your opponent to where you have the number superiority and the fight superiority, and you take out their heavy like threat, and then you just pounce.
Yeah. I mean, horses are incredibly overpowered, and just remember that they do have one weakness, and that is their base size. And if you've got a hero on foot, make sure to use that base size to your advantage. So make gaps where cavalry heroes can't fit through, but your own heroes can fit through, so they can slide through, get to places they need to go. Because otherwise, you are really suffering because of your ability not to take a horse.
Okay. We'll move on to the next profile, which is the Corsair Bosun. Evan, or who did we say was going to do the Bosun?
I think it was me.
Yeah, okay. Evan, if you want to go over the Bosun.
So yeah, the Corsair Bosun, 45 points, which is 5 points less than a captain. Move 6, and already we see a huge difference, which is the Corsair Bosun is fight 4. Strength 4, defense 4, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4, 1 might, another big difference, 1 will, 1 fate, sword and throwing daggers for war gear, same heroic action, so heroic march, and then the whole reason, well, one of the 2 reasons you're taking them, which is their commanding bellow, which is friendly Corsair models within 3 inches of a Corsair bosun count as being in range of a banner. So these are interesting models, to say the least, because there are some things that you really want them for, and there are other times when you're just like, I don't need to take them, because they're 5 points less than a captain, but they lose the 2 most critical parts about a captain, which is they lose 1 fight value, so they're fight 4, which means they're basically tying most normal troops. They're only out fighting stuff like orcs and goblins, and they only have 1 might, which obviously we talked about earlier. Sucks because Hishari, they also have 1 might, and they have some real problems. But that banner reroll can be very useful. I mean, they're the banner bearer of this list, unless you want to take a Black Numenorean with banner, and they do their job. They do their job. Obviously, if you're taking Suladan, they become far less useful because you've already got a 6-inch banner, so it doesn't really matter. And I think we'll probably discuss their other use when we talk about Corsair Reavers. But just keep in mind that if you're ever choosing to take Corsair Reavers, you are always taking at least 1 of these models.
They're Corsair Reaver delivery vehicles.
Indeed.
Yeah, basically, like Corsair Reavers are the package. These guys are Amazon Prime. They'll get, like they go well together. So, I always
if
find
the packages that Amazon delivered went berserk and killed everyone in your household once they arrived.
they sometimes do.
Doesn't for you?
No, I find Evan hit it right on the nail. You'll take them with the Reavers, and they become almost irrelevant if you don't take them with the Reavers and you have Soladan or even Dalgamar with his banner effect. I find that I just always take captains over them, and I talk to other Corsair players and they totally disagree with me usually, but I just don't like them that much in comparison to the captain. I think the captain with the 1 might, we talked again about the Sharon. The 1 might makes a huge difference, and the fight 5 as well. So them being fight 4 makes them very much just a support unit. That gives banner effects. They're basically a banner effect that's a 1 might 2 attack Corsair model. But the captain being fight 5 like puts them over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We'll go into a model which you don't rarely see in this army, but is available. The Black Numenorean Marshal. So Matt, if you want to go over that.
Okay, Black Numenorean Marshal, he says again, turning back pages. So I think me already talked about this model in the context of Barad-dûr, where it lives. But it's a 65-point model. It is fight 5, strength 4, defense 7, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 5, 2 might, 1 will, 1 fate. So basic high value captain profile. He's with fight 5 and defense 7, which is pretty darn tough. Comes with heavy armor, sword, and shield. He has heroic march, has heroic actions. He can get an armored horse and a lance, and he causes terror. Because I don't know, he smells so bad or something.
Oh wait,
like that.
don't forget, Dad. Don't forget, you can also swap your shield for a 2-handed weapon for 5 points.
I did not forget. I did not deign it worthy of reading.
It's very important because you can spend 10 points to take something that's worse than the shield you already have. So if you want to lose games, make sure to take that 2-handed weapon.
I will not acknowledge that option exists. It is not there. I do not see it.
Why does it cost 5 extra points? I don't understand. It's already so awful. Oh, whatever.
So anyway, if you want a mounted hero in this list, and you don't want to ally in Suladan, perhaps you don't own him, then Black Numenorean Marshal is a pretty good way to go. I mean, if you give him the armored horse and a lance, he goes up to 85 points, but he's actually a decent hitter at 85 points with a lance. He doesn't have heroic strike because he's just a captain, but he is fight 5. And he is defense 7, so he's pretty tough to take down. So he's a solid add if you want a mounted contingent to this list. Query, however, whether you want a mounted contingent to this list. As we'll see when we get to the various Corsair warriors, there's most of the time you just are going to want more Corsair warriors. So while this guy's maybe a fun ad, I'm not sure he's anybody that actually gets added to this list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you might want to use him for like a punch. He gives that kind of like mobility. We talked about all the other Corsair people being heroes being unmounted. As bad as that is, we kind of alluded to it being a benefit for this army and how it plays. But yeah, if you want that kind of just basic like high defense mounted model with a lance that just kills stuff, you can treat him kind of like a baby Boromir in a way that can't strike or has less things. You could do it. I think in my opinion, many other people's opinions why they don't take him is because that just doesn't fit the play style of optimizing all the options, the best options for this list. But yeah, it's doable. I don't know.
It seems that model always gets overshined in every single list that it could possibly be in. You take it in Mordor, Barad-dûr. I mean, they just don't get used, and it's a shame because it is a good profile. But there's so many other things that are better in every list that it's in.
I did see someone playing pretty good. Shoot, what was his name? Andrew
I will say
Brock,
this: Black
Brock from
Numenorean
Canada.
Marshals. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Andrew Brock from Canada played I think 2 of them at one of the Novas, and he was on top table that I played against him at that Nova, and he played pretty good with them. But what were you going to say, Tim?
I've played with Black Numenorean Marshal multiple times, and not to say that they can't do better at higher points. I just think they're really good at lower points. So like 500, 600, that's when the Black Numenorean Marshal does really well, because you don't have as many big heroes to worry about, so it lets your Marshal go in and do a lot of great things, being fight 5 with terror, and more than likely you'll find a way to maybe get him -1 courage as well around the area, so it'll make it harder for him to be charged. But it's just a shame. I really like the model, and I think it's a good profile, but there's always just, in every army it's in, there's always better things to take. We'll move on to...
I'm just going to finish this off here. So the Black Numenorean Marshal, as people have said before, suffers hugely from just being in the wrong lists, because in all of the lists
he's in a lot of lists.
He's overshadowed. But he's in some of the wrong ones because... Well, in Corsairs, he doesn't fit the playstyle, and in Mordor and Barad-dûr, there are just so many options that you have a better one. And point for point, Black Numenorean Marshal is actually super strong. I know, Rainier, you love your Haradrim Kings on horse with Warspear, but this guy is better than a Haradrim King on horse with Warspear in basically every single way. And
10 points more. 10 points more.
Yeah, he's 10 points more. But
terror and defense,
2 defense, terror.
Defense, yep.
You get an armored horse as well, and you lose out on the will, which is...
I just think the one thing that's lacking for him is like the Haradrim King like has the ability to lead like lanced fight 4 warriors that are really cheap, or Soladan, or like there's Mahud thrown in there. I think for Corsairs, if we're thinking of a pure list, it's kind of hard to synergize that hitting power with like an all infantry list, unless you take Black Numenoreans. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he's just in the wrong list, honestly.
Yeah, you put it perfectly right there, Evan. Like I totally agree. Like just in the wrong list, came at the wrong time.
I thought maybe I'm wrong. I thought that the Black Numenorean Marshal didn't he used to have 2 will? Wasn't he like a 2/2/1 guy?
I don't think so.
I don't
Maybe
think
I'm
so
wrong.
either.
I thought that's what made him kind of special was he had 2 will, but maybe I'm wrong.
No,
I think that was
yeah,
the Dunlending thing.
that's the Dunlending
Maybe that
chieftain or
okay.
whatever,
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
because they're very willful.
All right. We'll move on to the last hero model, which I think most people are going to be in agreement with. This is you try to get it in every single list is Delgamar. So I'll move that over to Matt.
All right, Delgamar, Gate Master of Umbar, because somewhere there's a gate, and this guy's the master of it. He is a hero of valor. He is 75 points. He's fight 5, strength 4, defense 5, 3 attacks, 2 wounds, 4 courage, 3 might, 1 will, 1 fate. He has armor, sword, whip, and throwing daggers. He has heroic strength. This is only special ability. His special rule is Ruthless Commander. Ruthless Commander, friendly Corsair warrior models within 3 inches of Delgamar may choose to re-roll a single die during the duel roll. However, if a Corsair model makes this reroll and fails to win the duel roll, it immediately suffers a strength 2 hit. The key thing to keep in mind with this rule, this is not like a banner. You are not limited to only having 1 guy in the fight reroll. This is you can have everybody within 3 inches of Delgamar make this roll.
Yeah, you can literally like surround a guy with like 6 attacks and spear supports and reroll all of them.
Reroll all of them. And as I'm reading this, I think, especially given the recent FAQs, the way we've always played it is as long as somebody wins the duel, then nobody has to take the strength 2 hit. And I think that is.
I think they specifically FAQ'd that very rule.
Right. Because there is a way to interpret this rule that says, if I have 6 guys re-roll, but only one of them actually rolls, then the other 5, have to suffer Delgamar's lash. But I think they have now FAQ'd it. So as long as you win the fight, which hopefully you will do if you're re-rolling enough dice, then you're good. And obviously this is something you want to use when you have a higher fight value, which you often will with Corsairs, and probably not something that you want to use if the other guy has a higher fight value, because especially if the other guy's got a 6. But this is probably the second hero you put in any list, any Corsair list. I suppose we could have a debate as to whether Corsair Captain goes in second, but I think you want this guy in the list at 75 points. He's another 3 attack. He's a 3 attack, 3 might hero. He's the only 3 might hero in this list. And he is definitely going in.
Yeah, that 3 might just makes a huge difference, because right off the bat, you now have a model who you can like easily expand for, or easily use his might points for heroic moves, heroic combats, things like that. I think one big mistake people make, and we talked about this with Huron, is he looks like a beat stick, but he's actually very, very delicate. So one thing that I always do when I play him, and I see people sometimes fail to do this, is they don't use all his might before he dies, because he will die pretty easily. I mean, he can come up against a mega hero and he can't heroic strike back, and they heroic strike and kill him. Even in combat, like lucky shots can kill him. So I say use his might points, not super liberally, but just use them enough to where you don't let him die, and he has no might points. That said, Matt opened the debate. It is kind of a hard debate whether it's him or the captain. I think the main concern is you need March in this army. If you get March with Soledad, if you ally in, maybe you don't need the captain. But going pure, me personally, I would like put the captain second to Dalmir because I feel like you need heroic march really bad.
Although, I mean, it's rare that this debate actually happens because heroes are so cheap in this list that you really need it. There's very few circumstances where you can't get Dalamir and Delgamar and a captain.
Mm.
I mean, you're down at like the 400, 350 point level before that's going to start to be a concern. So, you know, it's not like you have to sit there and, you know, kind of wring your hands about, am I taking the captain or am I taking Delgamar? You're going to take both. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll move.
Oh, and I guess, by the way, just a second, what Rainier was saying about him being squishy. He is squishy. This is not a guy you want fighting Aragorn, or you know, even an Uruk-hai captain for that matter. He is somebody that do not be afraid to have him kind of lurk in the back ranks, and then kind of choose his moment to kind of emerge and slaughter hapless warriors. Because he has a combat benefit that he can utilize even from the back ranks.
Yeah, I think his fight 5 has really pushed him again over the edge from choosing him over the Hasharan, because he is like that troop killer. You bring him up against like a fiefdom army, Minister Earth army, or like any of these like fight 4 armies you see, Rangers of Ithilien, like he's just like destroying them, like going to town.
Okay. Move into the warriors. And the reason why I think that this army is very competitive is because of the war gear in the first profile we're going over, which is the Corsair of Umbar. So Rainier, if you want to go over the profile for that.
Yeah, so the Corsair of Umbar, fingers crossed, please, Jay, don't change this model. Don't change this model. Fingers crossed, don't listen to this.
I think you're fine, Rainier, because Jay plays Corsairs.
That's a good.
But not the Knight of Umbar, I'm willing to bet.
No.
He's going to get like downgraded in the next FAQ. He's going to have 1 might. No, but the basic Corsair warrior, Corsair of Umbar, is 7 points bear. He's fight 4. He hits and shooting on 4, strength 3, D3. So he's basically wearing a cloth and nothing else. 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 3. So he's a basic warrior profile for a man, for the race of men. But defense 3 being that's the thing. Defense 3 being the going really down, and fight 4 being going really up. So you get a good fight if you give defense, basically, which is really interesting. But he is automatically equipped with throwing weapons at 7 points.
Yeah.
Which is, fingers crossed, Jay Claire, don't you? Which is amazing in my opinion. And you couple that with the Backstabber Rule, which 7 points, you're going to spam these bad boys, and you get a model that's fight 4 Backstabber with throwing weapons. Like, sign me up, please. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, he's right off the bat. He's really good. He does have quite a bit of war gear. Typical, he can come with a bow, a shield, and a spear. You don't really see them that often with bows, for the reason that we're going to go over a crossbow model probably after this. But yeah, you don't see him with bow. I know I play these guys and hoard them out quite a lot. I always put shields on them, actually, the spear support as well, for the majority of my army, because the defense 3, if you don't have a shield, they fall really fast against good armies, because good armies with basic strength 3 are going to wound them on 4s. So shield them up, in my opinion, although you can also go the route, which I have also gone, where you just hoard a whole bunch in the back with no war gear, and you get 7 point Backstabber, like throwing weapon guys that are just ready to do stuff. They can go get objectives, they can throw into combat, they can hit the flanks. They're protected by your basic troop line for bowfire. So yeah, I like them. When you're making a list, I suggest that you don't do 50-50 when it comes to spear and sword, because this army plays very much into the Backstabber Rule. So you want to outnumber your opponent, and you're not really going to be surrounding them with spears. That's kind of like a wasted point in my opinion. So yeah, how I build my list with these guys is I'll usually put six with swords to 4 with spear. That's my ratio. Yeah, but what do you guys think?
Don't like throwing weapons.
Yeah, I mean, if these guys are definitely on the top 5 and maybe at the top of the list of warriors in the game. And I mean, for all the reasons you stated there, I mean, you could get, especially since you have so many cheap yet effective heroes in this list, you can get tons of these guys. And it at the tournament points level list, you're going to be getting, 50 or 60 figures of these in the game. And that's 50 or 60 throwing weapons, which is, I mean, even if the other guy's got blinding light, you can just, once you reach that number of throwing weapons, even against blinding light, you can just you can sit there and just devastate somebody with volleys of throwing weapons. And, especially the tactic we discussed before, when the hero charges in, everybody else backs away and then throws into that combat. And the poor, the poor schmo Corsair who got victimized by that, who ends up with 8 daggers in the back, but the other guy's hero's horse ends up going down too. It's a worthy trade. I will say I do take a few. Evan and I disagree on this. I do take a few guys with bows. I think they are useful just because of their ability to move and shoot and somewhat keep up with the front line. And at the end of the day, they come in at 8 points. The Arbalester comes in at 10 points, but because of that ability to not move and shoot, they end up kind of they can end up being out of the action when the lines meet. Whereas your guys with bows can keep up that long range fire as you close, and then get in and actually fight. And yeah, I mean, they're defense 3, but I mean, so what? It's, your Corsairs will go down quickly, but you've got more of them. So who cares?
Yeah. I mean, there's again, not much else for me to say about the Corsair warrior. They're very solid. Do I think they're close to the best warrior in the game? No, I disagree with my father. I think models like Warriors of Arnor and stuff like that, which just have such ridiculous points being undercosted, I think outdo this model by quite a bit. But they are definitely a strong model. And the throwing daggers, while I don't love throwing weapons as much as the other two on this podcast do, I'm definitely more in Tim's wheelhouse, where I think they do their job, but sometimes they don't work, and sometimes they do work. And I don't like those swingy things when I'm playing my armies. So I think if we compare all of the lists that the three of us make, mine would probably have the least amount of Corsair warriors in it.
Okay, so that's good points, but I think I'd go with Matt, like pretty far with Matt, what Matt's saying, because I think the beauty of the throw-in weapon is you don't need it, to be honest, in most cases. But when it works and when it clicks, and when 52 of you know this, Tim, you know this.
Goblin Town. I remember when I took the Azog's Legion. That one game.
Poor Tim. He lost like 45% of his army before combat hit. But when 52 of them work at the same time, it's just a beauty. And I think the one Corsair weakness, because we talk about this, I love this list, but of course it has blurring weaknesses. Terror armies is its weakness. It's hard to get into combat, but throwing weapons mitigate that, because with throwing weapons, then your opponent is going to want to come into combat with you. Yes, and I've come against Agmar so many times, and it's like you have your crossbows just pounding into them, and then you have your front line, and they're like they come up to you and they're like, "Ha, you can't charge me," and you're like, "Ha, I don't care." So the throwing weapons are, in my opinion, it's what makes them such good models. Is a 7-point model with Backstabber would probably be worth it, but you basically get the throwing weapons
Yeah.
like for free, and it's like maybe you don't use them, but when you do, just the options to do so much shenanigans.
Yeah. I mean,
What were you saying, Tim? Oh yeah.
a lot of people confuse the impact of 4 throwing weapons, which is most of the time not much, with 40 throwing weapons.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, it's when you start to roll that many dice, the kind of the will it work, will it not work chance of it kind of goes out of the equation just through sheer geometric progression. And you're bound to do a significant number with that. If you can get into a position where you can get that many shots, you're bound to get a decent number of kills each turn. And once that starts happening, the other guy in terror has to start charging you.
Yeah.
And at that, or calling heroic moves so that you don't get your throwing weapons on the way in.
But even like the counter like throw, they get in, like you said, like Matt, like they get into combat. You just cool.
Yeah,
like
all the guys in the
I'm gonna
back
throw
rank.
12 guys like all thrown into that. Like who cares? And then even just the Corsairs, what makes them so dangerous is we're gonna go over the crossbows. Of course, we all know Urkai crossbows. Crossbows are horrible at 24-inch range. The Corsairs, the 6-inch range is so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to get into combat really fast, but then the synergy of the army is when you get into combat, then the heroes, like we talked about, you leave those avenues open. They can do the counter charge. You could even, I've played against, shoot, who did I play against? There was like a little in Canada, Dan Entwise. He had
Dan Entwistle or Dan Entwise?
Entwistle. Yeah.
I don't know a Dan
like
Entwise, but it's a cool name.
Yeah, Dan Entwise and Barry Treebeard.
We do know the co-writer of the Middle Earth SBG rules, so I think it would probably be Dan Entwistle.
Yeah. But I played against him, and like there was like this board where there's only like four guys could get through, and he had this beautiful fountain court guard, and he hit me, and it was like, okay, now combat's gonna start. And I took like 20 of my Corsairs, and I was like, no, and I just moved them back. And the beautiful thing about throwing weapons, you can move full and throw. So I moved them all back 6 inches and just threw into the combat, killed all my guys, and then it's just like the same thing. You just bring so many different maneuverability options into the game with throwing weapons. At this point, I get people's gripe with, I paid 15 points for like what are those guys? An iron guard, and I'm not really getting the throwing weapons out of them. I paid 2 extra points for a Lorian, not getting the throwing weapons.
Mm-hmm.
But here, you basically get it for free, and everybody has it. And when everybody has it,
me.
Exactly free.
It's a good point, which is normally throwing weapons. I don't think there's a single army where it's not 2 points for a throwing weapon per model, if I'm correct.
Warg Riders.
Yeah, Warg Riders. And actually, that's the other time you really see throwing weapons is on Warg Riders, because for 1 point, they're actually a fairly good deal.
Okay. So
except they have a base throw of
5. So, and that's the other thing I was going to talk about is the Corsairs have a throw value of 4. So for them to be able to, because obviously, let's assume your meeting line. So Rainier's charging in first. So he'll probably get off, what would you say? Probably, let's say at higher points, you probably get off like anywhere from 15 to 20 throwing weapons a turn, would you say?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, actually, you don't get, depends on if they move or not, but like, let's say 10 maybe.
All right, so let's say 10. Even if you're going against defense 6, you're probably going to maybe get at least 1, and to just get a free death by not even having to do anything really is, and that's assuming you just only get 1. You could get lucky, get maybe 2 or 3, and to then change, and with how many numbers you're already going to have, anytime you're lowering someone without risking actually doing anything to hurt them is just so massive. And like what
Mhm.
Rainier said, if there's, let's say there's 6 inches, 5 inches apart or whatever, and then you get to throw all 40 of them at one turn, and let's say you took out 4 or 5 of them, well, that's a massive loss right there. So
Yeah.
the throwing weapons are just so annoying in this army.
You find that like low defense hordes,
Exactly.
Corsairs
Anything that
just
isn't
like
defense 6.
cut through them like they're butter. Like it's
Exactly.
insane.
Like I just think about like an army like Harad, right? Harad can get a bunch of numbers, they can get bows, blah blah blah. But if they're charging forward, and Rainier then has, let's say, 15 throwing weapons, he's probably going to kill about 3 or 4 a turn. Through
Mhm.
throwing weapons. I mean, and I can't
Yeah.
really deal with that.
And I don't think so much the troop killer aspect of throwing weapons is the real danger. I think what kind of Matt said is the ability to dehorse heroes
And that's yeah,
in the move phase, or even wound or have the potential to kill your own guy so they don't heroic combat. Like
true.
that's just
That's another good
yeah.
part. Yep.
Well, I mean, one last thing on this. I don't underestimate the troop killing ability of this, and I guess
yeah.
one thing I'd take a little bit of issue with you, Rainier, is two ranking these guys, and the reason is that they typically have enough numbers that they can go into 2 ranks and still be longer than the other guy's battle line and loop around it. And the only thing that's worse than an entire front line that's throwing weapons at you as you're approaching is 2 ranks of guys throwing weapons at you.
Yeah, but I think that's the big thing is like you put the spears, of course, with the first rank, but you have all when you come around don't really put the spears. But even if you don't have spears on the second rank, they could still throw. I think that's like the beauty of it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we're running a little low on time here, but I think it's just quickly mention how horrific these are against armies that move less than 6 inches.
Oh God.
Hobbits.
Bane of goblins,
like dwarves or hobbits or goblins or anything like that. They're gonna walk into range and you can't charge them, so they're gonna get a couple of volleys at you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it
except die horribly.
Okay. We'll go over the Corsair Reaver. So Evan, if you want to go over that.
Yeah. So 9 points. I think they were 10 points last
I think they
edition,
were,
if
I think they were.
not mistaken. But obviously they've lost their most important thing, which they are now Fight 4 instead of Fight 5. Obviously Fight 5 was a little ridiculous. They're Strength 3, Defense 3, 2 attacks, 1 wound, Courage 4. They've got 2 swords, so none of those Reavers with axes things, unless you want to pay a point, which you almost always do, actually. And then they have the ridiculously complicated special rule mindless killers. And explaining this is not going to be fun. But basically the gist of it is every time they go to move, they take a courage test. And if they fail, they're driven into a bloodthirsty rampage. And they must charge the nearest enemy model. And if they cannot charge the nearest enemy model, if they cannot charge an enemy model, then they must charge your own models, which does a whole bunch of weird things. But along with that, they also get auto pass all courage tests, and they get +1 to wound if they are driven into the rampage. And the special thing about them with a bosun is when they are within 6 inches of a bosun, you can choose whether or not you want to go crazy. So when they're within 6 normally, you can just say, hey, I'm just gonna pass the courage test automatically. And then you can just also, if you're in range, you can say, okay, all my guys go absolutely crazy. They charge in, they kill stuff. So hopefully that was simple enough to understand. Corsair Reavers are interesting models because they hit very, very hard and they do a whole lot of damage because obviously +1 to wound on top of the Backstabber special rule is absolutely ridiculous. But Defense 3 is not.
No.
And you need to be super, super careful with them because elf bows love to shoot at these guys because they will just melt right through them, and your 9-point models are just going to disappear. Also remember that they used to be Fight 5. They are no longer Fight 5, so they're not nearly as powerful in the combat phase as they used to be. Because Fight 4, you're not as reliable with your 2 attacks. Say you charge into an elf and that elf shields, they're just going to beat you back. So if you're taking them, always take a bosun, and remember, you don't always have to take these guys.
Yeah, I find that they're not as reliable. You think they're gonna come like a Fight 2 Morgul Stalker, like frontline fight, like two attack Morgul Stalker frontline, 2 attack half troll frontline. These guys, if you're the frontline, your frontline's gonna like melt really fast. There's the possibility that you'll cut through your opponent, which is good, but the Fight 4 really, if they lose a combat, they're gonna die right off the bat.
Can I just propose this though? A Corsair warrior with shield is 8 points. They're 9, and you could add the extra point for the piercing strike, and I get that you lose the throwing weapon, and I understand, but they're not that far off of. They're only a point more for 3 attack, back rank, front rank kind of a thing.
I mean,
if you add Zuladan to that, you got 4 attacks with
Yeah. They're really good, and people swear by them. I know Devin's not on this episode, but when he takes Corsairs, he takes a buttload of them. At Articon not last year, the year that we had it at Articon, I saw all the Corsair lists that I saw at Articon had a buttload of these guys. Just me personally, I don't like their like low defense. Evan alluded to it. They die very quickly. And I know if you have a horde, that doesn't matter too much, but just I'm not a fan of it. And then coupled with, I like taking captains more. So you have to take the bosun with them. And right off the bat, you're going to lose out on 1 might and 1 fight for the captain. I mean, I still think they're extremely like low costed for what they can do. But yeah, I would advise don't take 4 or 5 of them. Like, take a lot of them if you're going to take them, because they are soft targets.
I actually take not 4 or 5 of them, but maybe like 6 or 8 of them. And I don't. They don't go in the front rank. That's not where they go, because they need to go near the bosuns, and the bosuns don't want to be anywhere near the front rank because they get shot. I have these guys kind of lurk at the back. And when the scrum happens, and you're in a position where you know that, because you always want to keep the bosun hidden. When the scrum happens and you know that you've got enough slots where you can kind of get them all into combat, that's when you turn them loose. And what I use them for is I use them to tag team with the heroes and do heroic combats. Because if you can get somebody where you can get like 2 of your foot guys on a guy, whether it's a mounted guy or whatever. And these guys are great to get into combat with a hero and do a heroic combat with, because of that plus, the 2 attacks with a +1 to wound. And God forbid you've actually trapped the guy too, and so these guys end up with a +2 to wound. And then you can send them into various places after the heroic combat. However, we now know after the FAQ that you need to make sure that bosun is still around when he's doing the heroic combats, because if they need to apparently test when they're doing the move before heroic combat now. And if they go nuts on that test, then they might.
Well, it's generally not problematic if you're
them in.
Because generally you're moving them and charging them again. So generally it's not a problem. But if you're trying to reposition them in some way, then be careful of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could end up in a heroic combat situation where you've screwed up and you've moved like your figure, so there's no longer any, because this happens in heroic combats sometimes. What you're really trying to do is like get your hero in somewhere with the heroic combat, and then like 1 or 2 of the guys who are in the heroic combat end up with no options to go in and charge somebody else. And you don't want that to be the Reaver and have him fail his test to go nuts and charge into the back of one of your guys on a heroic combat. That would not be good.
They're good models. Most people take them. Some people don't. Like, they're just at a good punch.
I like the ability to get +2 to wound though. I mean, that's pretty awesome. we'll move on to maybe you guys disagree with this. I would argue probably the best archer model in the game, because
Yeah.
I mean they. Well, we'll
I
get
would,
into.
I
we'll
would
get into-
disagree with
Yeah.
that, but
I was about to
don't
say
dis-
I would disagree as well. So
would
we
agree
can
with
get
it,
into
Tim.
that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
Let's start some
disagree
more
that
controversy.
they're on the list.
They're okay. So we'll say that they're up there. So I don't know. Let's go with Rainier if you want to go over the Arbalister.
Yeah, so the Corsair Arbalister is basically infantry Corsair, same stats, the fight for the Backstabber. The only thing is they're only defense 3. However, they have a crossbow, dagger, and pavis.
Pavis.
So pavis. Oh, sorry. Pavis.
Sorry, this episode is doubling as a pronunciation.
This episode is
It is.
is brought to you by autocorrect.
Yep.
Yeah, and if for all those viewers that are watching, like this is when we have like all the Americans on. As you can tell, we don't all speak with the same accent.
Talking about what you talking about?
What you talking about over there? Yeah, so the pavis, Lord have mercy. I feel more Italian just saying
It's
it
French.
like that.
It's a French word.
Oh my goodness, Lord have mercy.
Just
And
say
the
any
dagger.
country and just
Let me say, okay, so Matt, the dagger,
the dagger.
the crossbow,
Boo.
Corsair Arbalister. Okay, so he still gets a backstabber. The pavis basically gives him 3 extra defense when models are shooting against him. So I would go into
Well,
Tim's.
remember, it's not just shooting against him. It's whenever they're not engaged in combat. So I think I pulled this against my father once, but Gua here
I'm sure
hurled
you
through a
did.
whole bunch of them,
Yeah,
and they got their defense 6.
There you go.
there you go. That's good to know.
That's a really good point though, because I don't think a lot of people considered that. So that's good to mention to people that it's
Yeah.
not just when people are shooting at you; it's when you're not in combat.
That's really good to know. So crossbow's amazing. They're 10 points only, which is cheaper than the Uruk-hai
It's cheaper
crossbow.
than Uruk-hai and Iron Hills as well.
Now this is where I get it. I'm in Tim's camp in a way where even in our top archers episode, I think I rank these guys as probably one of as my top 5. But the ability to give this army what it's kind of lacking, and that's fire and cover. These guys can either be used as front rakes to take the shooting as you're marching up, or how I use them is I spam them, of course, and do what I call just suppressing fire. Like you have them, you move a rank with your guys, these guys shoot, then these guys stop. The next turn you move these guys, they shoot, and they just come closer like that. But yeah, they're pretty good model, and I think also combat wise they're pretty good. Most Corsair players that aren't that aggressive, I think, play them wrong, where they will charge their whole army up and keep them in the back. Then you just don't have the numbers to use backstabbers, and you have them in the back. They shot a couple rounds, and now they're just chilling, smoking a cigarette with that pavis. So what I do is I actually use them quite combat-y. Many people don't like this, but they can still shield.
Yep.
Which many people don't know or realize. So even if you have 3 of them go up against, like, say, a hero, and you shield with all 3, you have 6 dice, and the hero has to roll 6 to beat you. Or even the Backstabber Rule, you can even surround somebody with these guys, shoot them in the corners, and then when you go in with the army, use them as flankers. So they're really good. They're amazing objective holders, because people at the likes of Legolas are still going to wound them on 6s because they're defense 6 when not in combat. But yeah, I know people won't agree. I mean, the Iversons don't agree they're the best shooting, but Tim and I, Tim, these bad boys are amazing, right?
I will speak of a story, and I'll make it quick because I know we'll want to move on to the last profile. Basically, I played Rainier in a tournament. It was in New Jersey. I had Azog's Legion, and he had Corsairs. By end of round 4, I had been wiped off the table because of his crossbows. They just annihilated me. I think I had 40 models. I lost an ogre a turn. I think I had 2 ogres plus Azog. and then I had like 36 goblins. And I understand the goblins are low defense, but even if it was defense for Harada, like I would have been annihilated. And you can argue that maybe it was just really good shooting, but then the Arbalesters just annihilated me, absolutely destroyed me.
Coupled with the throwing weapons, you have a 24-inch range of
and the course
down to 6.
The last turn of combat was because of the throwing weapons. I mean, I think he killed like 7.
Like I think it was like a 700-point list, and I had all the big heroes, Dalgamar, Dalmir, and I still was able to bring like 18 crossbows with the 2 captains. Like it's disgusting.
I mean, I've never been tabled that quickly in my life. The game was over.
It.
Like, I didn't. No,
I enjoyed it.
I think the game was over in like 40 minutes. Like it was so quick.
Their crossbows, though, are no better than anybody else's crossbows.
But it's the cost efficiency for their crossbows
added
to the fact
so
that
what's an Uruk-hai crossbow cost?
So to be fair,
portability, I think, is what you're talking about.
Plus,
Tim,
they can't be shot back at nearly as easily as any other.
The Corsair Arbalesters, I would like to point out, actually aren't very cost efficient because some of the points are just sort of static, I guess, in a way, because remember, they are 5 points more than a Corsair of Umbar because they don't have the throwing weapons, so they're paying a whole lot for their crossbow and pavis, and obviously those are points well spent. But just a difference between cost efficiency and being an effective model. They are a very effective model, but their cost isn't the most efficient. And I think with the argument of best shooting model in the game, I think Black Root Veil Archers are just that little bit better, especially with that heroic shoot, because they do a little bit more damage.
And they can move and shoot, which is a dilemma for the Corsair Arbalesters. Is they're you do have to kind of balance their ability to shoot and their ability to actually get up and influence the fight. And since the Corsairs are a low defense army and are going to be tending to move toward, in some circumstances can move toward their opponent. Like if the opponent has blinding light, sometimes the Corsair Arbalesters can be left behind. But that said, they are still really, don't get us wrong. We don't think these are bad figures. Obviously you want to take a whole bunch of them. I mean, they are kind of the long range firepower of the list. And even if they do get left behind, they still have utility of shooting into combat.
Yep.
If somebody else doesn't have blinding light, then you can have all your guys with throwing weapons go in and engage, forget about them, and then your block of 12 Arbalesters sitting behind the lines then goes and shoots into that combat with the enemy's big hero, and they will take that guy's horse down.
So I think the interesting. I've talked to Rainier. I know we've had a conversation about this before. I've asked you, what is it with the Corsairs that you're afraid of that you would say I can't outshoot you? And I don't think you've ever said there's something you're afraid to not. You would take on Galadriel with 13 bows and still be like, I'm confident I'm going to win this.
Yeah, because you could bring like a pure Corsair list with like 62 models going against a Gladrim list with 34, maybe 35, and they're taking out on 6s, maybe 1 or 2 of your crossbows, and you're taking out shooting. I know I brought a pure list at 800. I have 22 crossbows. Some of those are going to hit, and when they hit, you're going to need a 5 to kill. You're taking out just as many people at the same rate.
Best shooting in the game.
That's against the best shooting in the game. You can even couple them with a heroic shoot. Exactly. And Black Rule, right? Archers, sweet. You're going to kill me. You can take out a captain. You can potentially take out Dalgamir. If I win the shoot off, I'm wounding all the Black Rule rate archers on a 4.
Yep.
And it's just, I mean, I played this my last game at Articon, and he had the Shadow Lord and some orc trackers, and he had a similar amount of guys as me. And he thought, okay, I have blinding light. I'm going to wait this out. And it did not go well because he wasn't killing any of my guys, maybe 1 a turn, and you're going to roll 6s. with around 20, and they're going to get through, and when they get through, they kill things. When they get through, they wound horses on 4s. When they get through, they do damage, and it just
and not to mention
it freaks people out.
You
to be
could,
honest.
in theory, if you do, so you could call. Do you have anything in the army that has accuracy?
No,
No,
Rasku's
okay.
the only evil hero with accuracy.
Gotcha.
I think.
I was gonna say maybe you could call an accuracy to get to like the person with blinding light, but I
But
mean,
not even that. Like I played against like a prominent member who usually takes Boromir on horse from the Carolina group, Jason Alexander, and you can put 6 guys in front of your Boromir on horse, and the crossbow's still going to make it through, and he's still going to dehorse Boromir. Like that's the beauty of them. Like it's just it's so much.
Because I know we were talking a second ago about the fact that the cost effectiveness versus how good it's all of this combined, which in my opinion makes them, if they're not top, then they're either 2 or 3 in my book, which is you have at least, I mean, especially in higher points, and to be fair, in most mid points as well, you're going to have so many of these models that then can shoot and do a whole bunch of damage, and then they can't really, they can take the damage back because unless they're dealing with crossbows themselves. But again, if they're dealing with crossbows, you're probably going to win that war because you're going to have more crossbows than they will.
Yeah. You come across, I think this list is the only one that could actually potentially survive against an Ithilien list. Just because if you get the heroic shoot off, you're going to take out a ton of, but we say cost effective. And I agree with Tim. Like, it's not like, the 10 points, blah, blah, blah. It's the 10 points for this list specific.
Yes.
It is a horde list.
You're bringing
50 to 60 models.
8 point warriors, and you get a ton of them.
Yeah, you're bringing 50 to 60 models, so you can literally spam these guys like you would in a siege list for Uruk-hai. Like, that's the only other army that I've seen potentially come close to that much crossbow fire. And when you have so many of them, the moving doesn't really matter because you are doing suppressing fire. You spread them out in your warbands. You don't make the classical mistake of bringing Dalmir and putting 18 in one warband and lining them up like it's like a Revolutionary War battle, and you're taking turns firing fire. Like, don't do that. Spread them in your warbands, and then you have 5 or 6 shot volleys coming from every direction in the game. No hero is safe. No combat is safe. Nothing is safe. No leader is safe. Like, it's disgusting. And then you can do suppressing fire. You can move some up, shoot, move some up, shoot. And you couple that with the thrown weapons, like I said earlier, it just makes it way, way better because then the opponent comes rushing in, then they're within 6, you throw. And it's just pretty good. I'd rank them as my top archer outside of heroes, just for what they do to the list. And the Backstabber too, they're no slouch in combat at 5-4.
Let us know in the comments what you guys believe is the best archer in the game. Maybe not necessarily if you look at the profile, but what in what army. So we're saying that we think the Corsairs in their army with their points at cost are the best in me and Rainier's opinion. You guys are saying the Ithilien Rangers in their list. So let us know in the comments what you believe is kind of the best archer in their army for what reason. We'll move into the last model, which unless I'm incorrect here, I think they got rid of the main reason you used to take them in this army, which was the ability to upgrade them to fight 5. They got rid of that?
I think that's in Harad, isn't it?
Black Numenoreans?
Yeah.
Well, the Harad and Umbar list used to be combined.
Yeah.
And you were able to take them as fight 5,
yeah.
which no one ever did because they always took Reavers. But you could do that. And now you can't do that with Black Numenoreans.
That's upsetting. I wish they had kept that rule where, at the end of the day, it's still an 11-point model to be able to do that. So that's a little upsetting for me. But
a
Matt,
10-point model.
Well, 11 with the upgrade,
11
the old upgrade.
Because they're
Black
9.
Numenoreans are 9, and then they go up to 10. So it would be 10 points. Anyways, let's go over Black Numenoreans while we're talking about them. I think we've already gone over them. So very basic, 9 points, fight 4, defense 6, courage 4, 1 attack, 1 wound, strength 3, and terror, heavy armor, sword and shield. And despite the fact that they don't benefit from the army bonus, it's still perfectly reasonable to take these guys in the Corsairs of Umbar list. And there's a couple reasons you would do this. One of them is I know Rainier likes just sprinkling a couple in there to add a little bit more defense in some places and add in some terror. And obviously, Courage 4 is nice to be able to pass some of those terror tests. I've seen other people ally them in. Well, take 1 just to be able to take a banner because they do actually have a banner option in their profile. I'm not sure why you would do this over just taking Suladan and dropping one of your Corsair heroes, but you could do this. And I've experimented, and I know there are some lists in Germany that just spam out Black Numenoreans in Corsair lists, and they just replace the entire throwing weapon front line with Black Numenoreans. And I mean, obviously, more effective than the normal one. I wouldn't say that. I think they both have their own merit to playing them. Black Numenoreans give you a more solid, robust shield wall, and they can be more useful against if your opponent has a whole lot of shooting. Their defense 6 can be really helpful just to protect some of your weaker models. And obviously the terror is really useful. So you can definitely take Black Numenoreans in this list if you want to.
And it goes back to that whole point where, like we were saying, how a Corsair with shield is 8 points. These guys are 9, but you also get the terror. You get the defense 6, which makes them a lot more stable in the front. Obviously, like Evan said, courage 4 if you need to charge things a little bit better. I mean, they're viable, but again, I think what it always comes back to when we always talk about this is the throwing weapons and how great the throwing weapons are. But what do you guys?
I usually take about five, like 3 to 7 of them in my
3 to
list,
7.
depending on the points match. In my 800 point list that I played at Nova, where I allied in the Serpent Horde, I still added, I think, 4 of them, 4 or 5.
So what do you use them for? The 3 to 7.
I use them to accompany Dalmir, to be honest, and it gives him a little more breathing room in his warband. Like you usually have, like your Arbalisters shooting defense 6, they kind of cover your Corsairs from getting shot out that fast, but also it spooks some armies that come to charge you, and when they fail a courage test, their battle line comes in all staggered, and it gives you more holes to use the throwing weapons. Mm-hmm. So that's why I take them, and then just the ability to have terror, like have that around Dalmir is like really good in my opinion. Because why not? I think they're way underpointed. Please, J. Claire, do not listen to this. But I think they're underpointed, to be honest. I don't think it breaks the list in any way because no one sees them really spammed too hard. And even if they are, of course, you alluded to it, you're giving up something to take them. Mm-hmm. So I think for 9 points, defense 6, terror, they're even high courage. They're courage 4?
Yeah.
And fight 4, like that for 9 points. Like what the heck? Sign me up. Like
in the model that everybody always compares them to is the Knight of Umbar, where they go, okay, you've got this model that has almost the exact same profile, and you have this model that has almost the exact same profile, but clearly this profile is much better than this for less points. But
yeah, but
I'll be honest,
we could do the same thing.
Yeah.
You say what?
The one thing I like to say is, and this might just be me personally, I notice a lot of times that the good profiles tend to have like that one where like it's like, oh well, this one's better than this one, so it's just a shame. I like that evil has that profile where it kind of gets the betterment over good sometimes. Mm-hmm. So like there are always those models where you're gonna go, oh, this one, this one's clearly better than this one for like the same points, so it's a shame. And most of the time I find it's with good, so I like that evil has that model over good every once in a while.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Descent, like lure wise, I don't really like the look of the model, to be honest.
I love the look of the model.
Oh, you love
it.
well for me
You
it's
can
like
either love these guys or hate these guys.
Yeah, they're a very
Yeah.
divisive model
They
in the looks department.
they're like politics. but I like the idea that they are Numenoreans. Like
Mhm.
that's what puts them over the
Yes.
edge. Like they are Numenorean blood.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I always from the books and stuff reading them, like in Umbar, they're more princely and they were rich. They had all the influence and stuff like that. So that's why I don't like the look as much, because it looks a little
Mhm.
grimy
Well,
for my style.
someone
I feel
pointed
like
to
if I converted them, I'd make them look actually a little more shiny.
somebody did this, which I thought was really cool. Somebody always likes to say that the model that they want the Black Numenoreans to look like is the Dark Marshal. Like they wish that a bunch of Dark Marshals with like faces is like the aesthetic of the armor and everything like that. It's like how they would want to do it. And so I think I saw a post on the GBHL Facebook page, and it was somebody converted like 12 Dark Marshal models into like Black Numenoreans, and it was just they had all these different poses. I just thought it was so cool, like when you saw them in that regard. But I'm always gonna wish that the Black Numenoreans had spear supports. I wish I could take a whole army of Black Numenoreans front and back.
Yeah.
I think it'd be so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah. So one final scummy thing you can do with these guys is if you've got a whole lot of them, you can just sit them out in front of all of your guys. And then when your opponent goes to make courage tests, they're going to fail some terror tests. And then you can take the remainder of all your throwing weapons and your crossbows from your spearmen and just shoot them all at those guys sitting out in the middle of nowhere. And especially against armies like Goblin Town, the majority of their guys aren't going to be able to charge and they're just going to get mowed down. So in some ways, even though they're losing throwing weapons, they can give you a really big shooting advantage.
It's actually a good point where if you had, and I know that we talked about small group, but if you had like a front rank, back rank kind of situation, and you did go against a low courage army, and they don't charge as much, you'd have, let's assume a third of them didn't get in, or a third of them did get in. So you have 2/3 of your army that could just sit there and literally just throw throwing weapons and not even have to
Yeah.
engage in combat.
Or you can gang up on the guys that did charge and kind of like put 3 against 1,
Yeah, you
2
can do
against
both.
1, 4 against 1. So
Mm.
it adds that tool. And like even like monsters love playing against Corsairs because all the hurls and throwing
Yeah.
and stuff. Like you can stop a troll with this. I've stopped the Goblin King with one of these guys before. Like it's just the Goblin King goes to charge and it's like, no, like not this turn, sorry.
Not today, bro.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, they are kind of for 9 points. Like, why not? They're kind of, in my opinion, like specters
Mhm.
in a list where it's like they might not do anything this round, but they might do something next round. In a whole 5-6 game tournament, they'll definitely have a role in one of the games.
Mhm.
So for 9 points, why not sprinkle 1 or 2, considering they're same points as a Corsair with spear and shield. So why not?
Any last thoughts before we end the episode?
No, just let us know what if you guys have had success with Corsairs.
Yeah, let us know what you think of the Corsair army, as well as any lists you'd like for us to review in future episodes. If you can leave any questions as well for a Q&A and let us know that it's for the Q&A, not just a question for us in general. And as always, we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if there's anything else you'd like for us to discuss in future episodes, leave that as well. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Bye.